Hello, fantastic people. I hope you're having a great day. By now, I think most of us understand that there's a rather large, well, actually, in perspective, it's not large, it's probably rather small, group of individuals, a network of elitist, often inbred, many pedophiles, who are ruling nations and doing whatever they want while they make sure that we do exactly as we are told. Now, there are many different groups out there, from royal families to quote unquote Christian groups, who are anything but, because it seems like one thing they all have in common is a love of the occult. From being a Jesuit or Kabbalah trained, our current president and many members in high-ranking positions in office currently, yeah, they all seem to really have a keen interest in the occult. And one of these networks that I would like to get into a little bit more detail today is the Roman Catholic Church. Now, the International Court has been investigating Pope Leo for the satanic ritual abuse and murder of Emanuela Orlandi. I'd like to get into that quite a bit because I don't see anybody talking about this. This is huge. This is an international court case against the new Pope and others who were involved in this ninth circle cult. And if you don't know what that is, you can look into some of my previous videos where I discuss that further. Or you can go on to this website, Murder by Decree. So let's get into this. For those of you who didn't know any of this was going on, again, go look into a previous video that I did about the Roman Catholic Church, and that should get you up to speed. And I'm going to talk about a couple other things as well, because they're connected. And also, I have a question for you. How would you like to own one of these? Yeah, I would totally have at least one, right? So much hidden technology that these inbred pedophile elitists hide from us. They are so good at wasting our money and hiding truths. But I'll tell you what, all of this knowledge that they use for space and the military, etc., all this science and technology, what exactly do they have to do to obtain this technology? Because I personally would rather not have it. Because I think I know exactly what they're doing to obtain this knowledge. And this story, man, is as old as time. If you're not going to believe in God, I pray you do. I pray you do at least give it a chance, look into it, because you'll find so much truth in it. It's going to blow your mind, right? It's going to change your world. Certainly change your life for the better. But the Bible, just like that astronaut said, he doesn't look at it as a source of his God. He looks at it as a historical book. And it is. Absolutely 100% is a historical book. It tells the history of mankind. And it explains everything that we're dealing with today, especially all this occultism and technology. So anyway, yeah, I would love to hover around like that. That thing makes good turns too, right? Pretty cool. What else are they hiding from us? Yeah, maybe it's better we don't know. So for the time being, let's dive deeper into this international court case against Pope Leo and others regarding the satanic ritual abuse of Emanuela Orlandi.
Everybody, welcome. We've got Kevin and Annette back, and this evening we are going to be talking about a new subject Obviously, it's going to tie into our other subjects. But the main subject is what's under the White House, what's going on there. We've also got news on the Ninth Circle arrests. So, Kevin, where would you like to start, please?
With that, what happened on Halloween? And so do you want to just jump right in?
Yes, please. What happened on Halloween?
Well, as you know, we sent out teams to places that we've known in the past or where these Ninth Circle cults operate. Also with all that evidence that's come out of the court case from our sources in Interpol and that. Two of the ceremonies were actually shut down. One was in Vancouver. One was in the south part of Belgium. Now, what's interesting, and I'm going to dwell on this a little bit, it's right along the same latitude, just like Beijing and Washington, D.C. are. We refer to this as kind of the Ninth Circle latitude, and it takes in three places in Canada, in England, and right across Europe. It's literally within half a degree of each other, all along the same energy latitude. The Vancouver Club in Vancouver, where traditionally these things have happened, and the place in south of Brussels, in the forest, it's called Couvin, the Couvin Forest. If you remember, that's where there's a picture of Tos Niehaus standing and pointing into a field where children were incinerated as part of these ceremonies. It's the same forest. And let me talk about Canada first, because it's really interesting. We accessed this, the basement of the Vancouver Club, through the tunnel system coming in off the harbor. And the people who were doing the ceremony did not expect this, which I find kind of stupid on their part, because we've been broadcasting this for quite some time. The fact that it happened on Samhain, the Celtic New Year, but also a satanic high point, it was significant because it's one of the two largest covens in the year. The ceremony was stopped not only because of something that is a great weapon. This was, I don't know if you can see it. It's the original. No, you probably can. It's too white. This was the right of entry form that Chief Capilano, who traditionally owned all of Vancouver, he was the traditional Squamish chief. He filed this in the Supreme Court of British Columbia when we started doing our church occupations, 2008. It gives me the legal right of entry into any building in Vancouver. Now, what was interesting, when they used these documents, the RCMP showed up. They did kind of a perfunctory attempt to stop us. They saw the document, they left. This document is very powerful because it's a law. It was filed in the BC Supreme Court, and the team there was able to shut it down completely. They detained some of the people took off. Three of the people who were involved in the ceremony were detained, handed over to the police, and all of it photographed, all of it documented. Now, what's really interesting about that is that we found material there. And one of the reasons we're able to get in there is because there are these Chinese police stations that are opening up all over the world. Figure in 34 countries, China, including England, China has actual extraterritorial police stations that they operate out of. We have sources in the one in Vancouver, and they tipped us off not only that the event would be happening there under the Vancouver Club, but the links the Chinese military have to this place. And when we were down in these tunnels, and I've been down there a couple of times, it's right beneath the Marine Building, one of the oldest downtown buildings in Vancouver. There's an extensive tunnel network that runs all along what's called Burrard Street, where the three major churches are. Whenever we used to do protests and occupations of those churches, the cops would be on us, right? Boom, just watching everything we're doing. Because this traditionally is where children are all trafficked. I remember as a street minister in Vancouver many years ago, I'd be talking to guys, on the street line outside the Vancouver Club. They said, yeah, we hear all these weird noises coming from under the sidewalk, like drumming and chanting and all this stuff. So, it's been a hotspot. And I find, people almost have a death wish, who are involved in these activities. Some part of them doesn't want to continue in this. And so they open themselves up to these attacks. So that one was shut down. There were children I was not at that. I'm in another location. But based on what I've seen, they were able to free children. The dilemma, of course, is what do you do with those children? You can't turn them over to the regular family protection system, because that's the place that traffics the children. So fortunately, we have families that are able to take some of these children in, also debrief them as to what happened and where they're from. They were Asian, which was significant because the Chinese operated a huge child trafficking network right through Vancouver. And so anyway, that was a success. In Brussels, it was also interesting. It was in not one of the, but there's like 1,500 castles all through Belgium and the Netherlands, which traditionally where these things take place. It was in a very humble cottage, but underneath it was the typical kind of crypt and being used for a long time. That too was shut down. Now, I want to say another part of how these things were shut down. It wasn't just through physical intervention as well. So that was really exciting to experience. Mm-hmm. And what was also significant is the day before, this all happened on Halloween, on Samhain. And the day before that in Vancouver, for the first time in its history, CTV, which is a major TV network, reports a breaking news report on child trafficking. But then it's a very mild milquetoast kind of report, never names names, never talks about the real things going on. So it was another media distraction. Just before we take action, they do a big fog and distraction over here saying, no, look, we're addressing child trafficking. What they didn't mention was, and one of the sources who brought us to the Vancouver Club, a woman who used to work, she was a exotic dancer in downtown Vancouver. The Vancouver police started trafficking her. And she discovered, they said to her, you can avoid a jail term if you go work, call this number. She calls the number. It's a United Church of Canada official who coordinates all of the children's camps all up and down the coast. She was hired by them to recruit children to come into a place called Camp Furcombe on Gambier Island. A hotspot, a lot of satanic rituals reported there. These children are being trafficked right through the United Church system. You know, my ex-church, right? And don't forget, one of the two guys in the court case recently who reached out and tried to make a deal was the United Church of Canada former moderator, Gary Patterson, who pastored one of those churches right along Broad Street above he's a member of the 12 Mile Club. And it's all part of that network. So it's like the system puts out the fog so that no one's really looking at what we're exposing. They're looking at the false narrative, as usual, which pretends to address the issue, but never does, never names names or any of the stuff that we've garnered from eyewitnesses and physical evidence. And I'm going to lead into part two now. That all of that was in Vancouver was partly because of the support we had from these sources within these Chinese security forces. Because don't forget, no power block is solitary. There's all sorts of factions. And there's an element in the Chinese community in Vancouver that do not like Beijing's takeover. And they're helping us undermine it. And as part of that, they pointed to the second piece I'm going to talk about, which is what's going on in DC and is linked to Beijing. Now, I want to throw a few interesting facts at you. Do you remember? So what's happening for folks who haven't followed the news is the Trump administration is pulling down the whole East Wing, okay? And they're building what they call a ballroom, right? Now, the East Wing is right above the Presidential Emergency Command Center, and yet they're gutting it all. So why are they gutting the most important place in the White House? Just digging it all up. Whenever Trump talks about it, he keeps using the expression, it has a capacity for 999 people. He doesn't say 1,000. He doesn't say 9,900. He says 999. Now, that's a very significant number, not only because of the inversion of 666, but in China, it's also very important. When you look it up, the number 9, ninth circle, it's a power number. And remember those 10 children who were trafficked and done away with by Elizabeth and Philip and Charles that William Coombs reported seeing. 10 is a completion number, but just before that, it's a number that has to do with empowering movements into a new era. And it has both a light and dark quality. So it's about transformation and creating a new longevity, like a new regime taking over. But in order to do that, there has to be a big act of violence. There has to be a crushing of the old order. And, we're witnessing that all over the world, but it's also a blood ritual. And so they're always going on about this 999. If you look at where Beijing and DC are, they're within half a degree of latitude of one another. DC is at 39.9 degrees north. Beijing is 39.5 degrees north. Plus, they're exactly 12 hours apart along longitudinal. You can take a line, you could somehow cut a tunnel right through Mother Earth. You'd come out in Beijing and DC. Not only same latitude, but exactly the other sides of the globe. So it's almost like there's this bipolar energy matrix being set up. And that's really significant. 9 in China is called the emperor's number. In the Forbidden City, where the Chinese Communist Party and state had their headquarters, there were 9,999 rooms, apparently, in the Forbidden City. This number 9, ninth circle and everything keeps coming up all the time. So there's like this new bipolarity being created. Also, there you go. I want to show you some of these images now. One of them is a schematic layout of this new creation in the White House, right? And it's literally the same shape as what's called the Zhongnan High, which is the White House, the equivalent of the White House in Beijing. It's where the party and state have their headquarters. And if you look at it, you'll see it's the same shape, roughly the same size. And it's like 2 imperial palaces, really one, okay? And I don't know, can you pull that one up?
So this is the first image I've got.
Okay, here's the White House. They're pulling down the East Wing, and look what they're replacing it with. It's even bigger than the whole White House. And that's really significant, because here's another really good piece of evidence we've come up with. The people building, or the company building this new addition to the White House, it's called Clark Construction. It's going to cost $300 million, and it's for a ballroom, so-called, and it's 2.5 acres. It's huge. And there's a source connected to Clark Construction who's commented on this. Here's a quote from the source. There's lots of electronic hardware scheduled for insertion in the basement complex being built beneath this hall. It'll be like a second Pentagon. Okay, those are his words. And schematics, and apparently he did a rough kind of sketch of this based on memory. The schematic showed there's going to be at least 3 subterranean levels to this thing. And so it's going to be much larger than the 90,000 square feet, 2 acres of that hall. What's significant about that too is that Washington, D.C. is built on very porous rock. There's lots of caves under the White House. Lots of these things which traditionally have provided a sanctuary for ninth circle ceremonies, medical experimentation, military programs, all of that tends to happen, and that's the system they're creating. And so naturally their architecture and we do a lot of
Well, freedom. So thank you. All right. So let's see. There doesn't seem to be any documentation on Kevin's website of his Halloween activities in Vancouver. Where can it be found?
It's all documented. It's all on the court record. You see, in our culture, people equate legitimacy with whether you see it on the internet somewhere. And the internet is controlled by the enemy. So no, you're not going to see this stuff on their platform. You will see it if you get close and do work with us, because we're like an iceberg. 99% of the work we do is off cyberspace. It's in direct contact with people. There's tons of evidence. Even on the internet, you go to murderbydecree.com. Everything we've ever referred to here is all documented with statistics, forensic evidence, documents showing the massive death rates in these like native death camps in Canada. All of this stuff, the proof in the real world of forcing highest people in the Vatican out of office. I mean, over and over, the evidence is all there. But we've got to get our heads out of the bubble of looking through the eyes of the oligarchs that are running the system. And so it's partly a perception problem people have, that they think you're going to find proof somewhere. And I like that quote from, I think it was Oscar Wilde. No, I'm sorry, Bertrand Russell. He said, he was asked about proof in philosophy, and he said, if you tell someone something that affirms their view of the world, they don't need proof. They'll automatically believe it. But if you say something that challenges that world view, all the evidence of the world is not going to convince them, because it's not about evidence, right? I could show you an image of children being ripped apart and people would not want to believe it because it's so horrible and would say that's just an AI image they've created. That can't be happening. We get that all the time, from people. So it's not about proof, because the proof is all out there. The proof is in your own life every day, looking around at what's happening when you use common sense and reason at this nightmare that's being created in the world. The issue is how you view the world and whether your head is in the bubble that's been put in around you since the day of your birth, to be dependent and look to the very people causing these crimes as a source of justice or legitimacy or information, right? Don't forget the internet, cyberspace, the whole thing was a military invention, just like television, to control the human mind, give us one source of information and communication that can be controlled. So everyone is thinking the same thoughts, and that's the agenda, to turn us into cogs of a machine mind. That's the ultimate omnicide. And as long as you rely on this medium for ultimate truth, you're going to be led around by the nose, and that's the whole point of that, right? So anyway, it's the way our take on the evidence. Contact us, we'll meet you in person and show you in real life even more evidence, right?
So you've got a cluster of questions pertaining to arrest news.
Mm-hmm.
People want to know what's the comprehensive news about arrests.
As in
Ninth Circle.
Oh, like I said, people were arrested, but again, these in these two locations are relatively low level. I mean, the big guys. Look what happened. Okay, and here's another thing. Literally within a few days of the verdict of the court case coming out that it had convicted Charles and Pope Prevost and all these guys. What does Charlie do? Goes down from London to Rome and has a ceremony with the Pope, and they exchange titles. Okay, what? They're part of the same club now, apparently. I thought Charles' coronation oath was to defend the Protestant faith in England. There he is at a Catholic mass, and they're giving each other titles. So what they're saying to each other in the world is, we've got each other's backs. We've been convicted. It's an act of fear on their part. They have to cover each other's backs. All these people vanish. Mark Rutte hasn't been seen, the head of Nato. He hasn't been seen in a long time. He's gone off the radar. That's a sign that, with our meager resources, look at the impact it's having. So the question isn't about Kevin. It isn't about Kevin, show me what you've done. It's up to you now to get involved, because the more of us who get involved in this, the quicker they're going to come down. We've shown how weak they are. I'm still walking around.
So what do you think about Charles kicking Prince Andrew out of his mansion and the stripping of the titles?
It'll get more and more that way. He's the scapegoat. We're supposed to focus on him, kick him to the curb, and then everyone thinks the problem is solved. I mean, it's the oldest game in the world, and it happens routinely. And that's the advantage. In Art of War, Sun Tzu says you have a great advantage over a bigger enemy, because they can only respond in predictable ways. They're bulky and they move slowly. You can outmaneuver them as a guerrilla force, which we've done all the time, especially in the church occupations. That's why we say the key isn't to necessarily make arrests, because that's not going to stop what's going on. You arrest individuals. It's to take down the system and to disrupt the ceremonies and save children's lives. Now, I mean, the fact that very few people get involved in doing that raises real questions about this. We're not only in a mentally dissociated state, which you have to be to live in this crazy culture. You got to, there's got to be a complete break between what you know is true and what you do every day, right? Otherwise, well, Freud talked about that, right? You got to dissociate to live in society with other people, But what's even worse is the emotional dissociation, where we can hear all this stuff about children being torn to pieces, and it's happening close to you. People don't do anything. Are there thousands of people in the streets protesting the child trafficking and murder? No one will near that. Not only because it's frightening, and it might have happened to us in various ways when we were kids, but we're emotionally detached. We've lost our inherent instinct to protect our young. And what does that say about us, what's happening to us? That's the thing to focus on, not let's get these bad guys and put them in jail. That's not the issue. The issue isn't why these people are doing it. The issue is, why are we letting them do it? And we've tried to be a catalyst all the time, a shock, to get people to wake up from their own captivity in the same system, right?
So there you have it, friends. That is a remarkable man, Mr. Kevin Annett. And if you'd like to know how you can get involved and help to save the lives of countless children, just go ahead and log on to your computer and check out his website. It is Epstein Justice. Let me see if I can get it in there. There we go. Epstein Justice. Different ways that you can help out. All you have to do is give them your email and they'll be in touch, and you'll be able to join the campaign and help prosecute the sex traffickers once and for all. Say a special prayer for the protectors, for protection for Mr. Annette and all those who are fighting to save the children. Thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you check out the website. I hope you join the cause. And until next time, take care. God bless. Bye-bye.